Okay, Itamik Skanatami. It is the morning of July 1st, 2016, Canada Day, and we are just in the very tail end of the lunar cycle Misamsota, the long rains. I'm out here at Spopikimi. We're going to be transitioning into the lunar cycle Okonokis Tsotsitsitspi, when the Saskatoon berries ripen, which is the midsummer lunar cycle. And someone on YouTube recently posted an inquiry, a comment on one of my videos, and asked whether I would be willing to show some of the wild edible plants around Lethbridge. And there's a lot right now. This time of summer, there's a lot to be harvested. You could be harvesting every day different plants. There's dozens. But this morning I'd like to show a couple that are really important this time of year, and the ones that I focus my harvest on. They're readily available throughout the coulees in the city. So yeah, we'll go look at some stuff very worthy of the term edible. So no introduction to the foods of this time of year would be appropriate without the inclusion of Okonoki itself, Saskatoon berries, which were, to indigenous peoples here, to Niitsitapi Blackfoot peoples, this was a mainstay, a staple year-round. So many Okonoki were harvested each year. And here we have an example of this plant and the berries. You can see there. The berries, when they're ripe, should look like a dark purple to almost a black. And you can find these throughout the coulees of Lethbridge. Really delicious. They're basically like a blueberry. One of the things though around Lethbridge proper, you don't find many of these very tall plants like this. I mean, there's some, Indian Battle Park and other places like here at Spopikimi, you can find some, but typically the Okonoki that are available in Lethbridge take a different shape, and I'm going to show you that now. Okay, here is another example of Okonoki in Lethbridge, a plant that is less than 6 feet tall, growing on the coulee slopes. And I don't know if you can notice, in comparison to the large bush growing in the coulee, this one is actually far richer in terms of berries available. So a lot of people unfortunately dismiss these plants, these small plants growing on the coulee side. These are not young Okonoki. These are just as old as the large bushes that are growing in the lush cottonwood forests. But it's just because of the exposure that they have to the wind, to the snow and other elements, that they have a stunted size, but they actually have really great berries and very juicy. And in my estimation, for Lethbridge itself at least, lots more berries to actually harvest on these small plants than going to look for the very few large bushes in the coulees. So pretty much every coulee slope, every draw in the city has Okonoki bushes like this that are very small, that are inconspicuous, but that are loaded with berries, and they're overlooked. The birds don't overlook them, of course, and we only have a small window right now in which to harvest. If you wait a couple of weeks, all these berries are going to be gone. The birds love them. They're going to be gone. They're going to eat them. So if you want some Okanoki, wild Okanoki from Lethbridge, now's the time. Another short shrubby berry bush that you'll find on the coulee slopes are these bushes that you see all behind me on this edge of this coulee. This is all Skunkbrush Sumac, and it produces a red berry that is very, very strong in citric acid. You can take the whole cluster like this, and you can just see perhaps the glistening on my fingers and on the berries themselves. That's all citric acid, and very strong citrus, lots and lots, just packed with vitamin C. To me, they remind me of, if you've ever eaten Sour Patch Kids, that candy, they're like that, the flavor. They really pack a wallop. Just really nice sour vitamin C taste. It's like when you bite into a lemon. So the good thing about these berries is tons of vitamin C, very easy to collect, lots of them. Bad thing about them is they're pretty seedy, right? So I usually just swallow the seeds and everything. And I recognize that in the past, this was part of our relationship with the berries. We would harvest the berries, we'd eat the berries, we would eliminate the seeds. And where we eliminated the seeds, new berry bushes might grow. And so, in fact, it's not unbelievable at all to assume that some of these berry bushes in the coulees here were started by seeds that passed through human bodies in the past, passed through indigenous bodies. And certainly a lot of them also pass through bird bodies and this kind of thing. And this is where we get, you know, the fertilizer for the seed to grow up into a nice plant. So I eat the seeds, but some people would be turned off by the seediness. If you are, that's okay, because there's an alternative way of using these Skunkbrush Sumac berries, and that is you can gather the berry, throw it in some water, throw a bunch of berries in a pitcher of water, and it basically will turn that water into like a lemonade. Really good stuff, really like a lemon water. So the Blackfoot name for this plant is one of the names that's been lost. In fact, well, at least I've never found anybody who can tell me the name of it, and I've never found any reference to it in archival materials. So ultimately it may need to be renamed. But you can bet this was part of the diet in the past, just because of how much vitamin C it would have given people. It's really strong and in my estimation pretty tasty. In my opinion, second to the Saskatoon, to the Okanoki, in terms of importance right now, are the different styles of Sarvis Berry, the Sarvis gooseberry, which is basically a currant. We have red currants, we have golden currants. Most of our currants are golden. We also have a black currant, and I have a plant down here that actually has kind of all three, because they're not really different species. Here we go. This is a verging on black currant plant that also has kind of the golden phase in it. They're not really different species, they're just kind of subspecies. But in any case, really delicious and really abundant. These grow like grapes all over the coulees of Lethbridge, and most of my harvest is going to be gooseberries. Now in the past, gooseberries weren't as important, or not gooseberries, but the currants. They weren't as important because you can't dry them. They don't dehydrate well. They don't keep well long term. But in the modern age, we have freezers, and we have other ways of preserving, canning, and this kind of a thing. So in this age, these are, you know, there's so many of them, we might as well pick them in abundance. Even in the past, they were very much enjoyed during their time, right, during their season, in a kind of a macrobiotic way. Everything was eaten in its season, fresh and raw. But some things, like okonoki, were preserved and eaten year-round. So this is one of the very, very important berries for me this season. And you can find this, again, in every draw. Now these plants, you know, they're kind of lush, and so where you're going to find them is in the actual coulee draw, in that middle strip where the water condenses and runs down. You're going to find currants. But throughout Lethbridge, every single coulee draw is going to have some currant plants, and then along the rivers as well. And they're often very, very dense with fruit, as these ones are here. One thing you want to be wary of is not to confuse the wild currants with Tartarian honeysuckle, and that could easily be done. Look at this. Right here we have a golden currant growing in abundance here off of this bush. Right next door we have another golden berry, but this is Tartarian honeysuckle. And notice how the two berries are kind of bonded together. And look at the leaf. This is a lance-shaped leaf. Over here, this is more of a maple-shaped leaf with the edible ones. So the edible ones have a maple-shaped leaf, just like a gooseberry. The non-edible ones grow in pairs and have a lance-shaped leaf. And they actually come in the same kind of color varieties as the gooseberries, or as the I keep calling them gooseberries because in Blackfoot they're basically considered a kind of a gooseberry. But you can see here, it's another Tartarian honeysuckle, a red variety, and they grow right in the same areas, obviously, as the currants, right? So you can also look at the berries themselves. I mean, obviously these are bonded in pairs. Birds like them. Birds have no problem with Tartarian honeysuckle, but for us humans, we don't go for that. If you look at the berries of a currant plant, you'll see they got kind of like little white stripes down the middle of the berries that don't occur in the honeysuckle. But you know, for me it's really easy to tell. These are a bonded berry, two together, lance-shaped leaf, not together, and maple-shaped leaf. All right, that's the big difference, and you want to know that difference. Don't pick a bunch of Tartarian honeysuckle. Not that you're going to poison yourself. You're going to taste them and you're going to be like, ugh, I'm not going to eat those. Birds love them. Some birds anyway. I know the cedar waxwings. I watch them and they pick them and they love them. But for humans, not so good. Last but not least of the berries that you're going to want to harvest in this lunar cycle are these white berries of the bush known as Micapixois. Micapixois is the red willow, also known as red osier dogwood in English, but in Blackfoot the direct translation Micapixois would be red willow. And I know that a lot of people subscribe to the general rule that if it's a white berry, you don't pick it. And yeah, that's a good rule for people that aren't going to bother learning the different species. Because in general, yeah, that's true. But in specific, no, that's not true. And this is one of the white berries that you can definitely pick and eat. The old people like to mix this with sweet berries like Saskatoons. So you get kind of a sweet and sour mixture. This is kind of a cross between a sour and a bitter. And, you know, in the past, there weren't a lot of strong flavored foods like there are today. Now that we got these, you know, processed foods and stuff, they can pack all kinds of chemical flavors into our food. So we're used to tasting strong flavors and lots of sugars and lots of spices and stuff. In the past, it wasn't like that. So even like by today's standards, when you eat one of these berries, one of these Micapixois, they don't taste good by today's standard. They taste bitter and sour. But in the past, this is a strong flavor, and it was really relished to go along with the sweet flavor. So I always harvest some of these. As a final note, you are going to see also some of these red berries out in the coulee. These are called Mixinitsim in Blackfoot, and in English they're called buffalo thornberries, or I just call them bullberries. And those, even though they're on the branches right now, you don't want to gather those yet. They're not ready. They come to their peak way at the end of summer and at the beginning of winter. As we get our first frosts, they come into their perfect sweetness. So wait on those ones. But you have, for this lunar cycle, you got Okonoki, you got Saxi Paxinitsimon. You might even find some regular Paxinitsimon, some regular gooseberries in the coulees of Lethbridge. I know where there's some, but they're very few and far between. You've got the Skunkbrush Sumac. The Blackfoot name is lost for that. And you've got these Micapixois, these red osier dogwood. That's plenty. You know, with our modern lives, we don't make enough time for these berries. We should be harvesting right now. And we're not going to, but if you get a few days out at least and get some harvest and keep them, you know, keep them around for the winter, maybe throw them in your smoothies and that kind of thing, it's a nice kind of locavore inclusion. And for me, it makes me feel more human.